Hi, I'm Haley and I'm making this video today for a biology project on macromolecules. So to start with the basics, macromolecules are large organic compounds that contain carbon. The covalent bonds that carbon can have with other elements, usually itself, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, are defined by a ratio, and these ratios are what differentiate each macromolecule from each other. Macromolecules can also be referred to as polymers because they are made of many monomers. Polymers are formed through the dehydration synthesis, sometimes called the condensation reaction. The dehydration synthesis is the process where monomers combine through covalent bonds and produce a water molecule as a byproduct, hence the dehydration part of the name. In the opposite sense, polymers are broken down through hydrolysis. Unlike the dehydration synthesis, where monomers come together and lose a water molecule, macromolecules are separated by adding water. I said before that macromolecules are defined by their ratio, and there are 4 different ones: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. The function of carbohydrates is to produce energy for our cells. Carbohydrates are the sugars, like glucose, that our bodies use and make energy with so it can function properly. These carbohydrates can be classified as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides are the simplest class of sugars, like ribose. Disaccharides are 2 combined sugars, and polysaccharides are any combination of 2 or more monosaccharides, like cellulose, the sugar in plants that are so complex that we can't digest them. Any carbohydrate monosaccharide that has a covalent bond with another monosaccharide or non-carbohydrate molecule is connected to that molecule by glycosidic linkage, a fancy term for sugars being linked. Some examples of high-carb foods that we eat are bread and pasta. Lipids have many functions. Insulation, they serve as chemical messengers in people, steroids for example. Lipids are a component of cell membranes, they protect against water loss in plants, and they store the most energy out of all macromolecules. Lipids are made of fatty acids that are made of a carboxyl group on the end of a hydrocarbon chain. Triglycerides are glycerol molecules that are bonded to 3 fatty acids by ester linkage, a bond between an alcohol and an acid during the dehydration synthesis. The fatty acids can be either saturated or unsaturated. Saturated fatty acids do not have double bonds, which means the carbon-to-carbon bonds are single covalent bonds. Unsaturated fatty acids have at least 1 double bond between carbon molecules. This is important because saturated and unsaturated fatty acids can have different effects on your health. Saturated fats can increase your risk of heart disease, while unsaturated fats can lower your blood cholesterol. So when you see the saturated fat section on the side of your Girl Scouts cookie box, it's measuring the amount of lipids without double carbon bond. Another example of lipids is the waxy coverings on leaves that have to keep their water during the winter. Proteins also have many functions: storage, regulation, transportation, movement. They give structure to things like your hair and even your nails, and they act as enzymes. Proteins are made of amino acids. The amino acids are connected by peptide bonds. There are different levels of structure that peptide bonds can have. The primary level is just a chain of peptide bonds. The secondary level includes the alpha helix structure, where the peptide chains form a tight spiral. This allows all the peptide bonds to create hydrogen bonds with each other, which makes a stronger structure. They can also make beta-pleated sheets. The peptide bonds attach to the sides of each other so they can make more hydrogen bonds by stretching out the peptide bonds. The tertiary level are the secondary level proteins folded in on themselves, and how they are folded determines their structure. A good example of regulatory proteins are hormones. Nucleic acids' main function is to store genetic information in the form of DNA and RNA. There are 2 forms of nucleic acids: deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. Although they are made of different sugars, they have the same structure. Nucleic acids are formed from a base pair in nucleotides, which is a phosphate group, a pentose sugar, deoxyribose for DNA and ribose for RNA, and a nitrogenous base. Phosphodiester linkage is what links the sugar molecules to the phosphate groups to the other sugar molecules, which adds structure to the double helix-like figure of DNA. Macromolecules are essential for living organisms. We use them for structural support and functionality within our cells. Without them, we wouldn't be able to maintain life. Unlike the the function of carbohydrates is to produce energy for our cells. Or non-carbohydrate molecule. Any carbohydrate molecule isolation. They serve as chemical message. They are the component of cell membrane. Lipids are made of fatty acids that are made of carboxyl groups. Fatty acids by ester linkage. Unsaturated fatty They can also make B-pleated sheets. I should probably say beta. This allows the hydrogen. Nope.